Does this change your view of the trade that wasn't?
Well, first, let me say this, because this was really the first emotion I felt listening to it. It's a great listen. I was thinking when he said, and people, we didn't play the whole thing, but when it was hours. He was at the facility for hours before he met the GM Eric DaCosta and the head coach Jesse.
Can I tell you something? I'm gone. I'm gone.
Well, okay.
I think you said 5. Was it 5 hours? Did he say?
Well, he said he was there an hour before the physical, and he still hadn't met him.
Right.
So and then he has the physical and then meets him later. But like
I'm out of there.
The fact that go ahead.
Sorry. Well, but I'm thinking when he finally met him, he said the energy was off.
Yep.
And they said, like, we don't know how to say this, but our doctors have some concerns about your knee and what we saw. I was putting my thinking to him, and he said it. He was terrified. Imagine at that point, he's really thinking, is my knee really jacked up? Like, am I never going to be the same? And he still may have those thoughts. He talked to his doctor. He reassured him. But he still may have those thoughts. So I was just thinking, I felt for him.
Yeah.
Because I was like, in that moment, he probably was really like,
worried about
what?
His career.
Like, yeah. So, but honestly, to answer your question, this just bolstered. Now, I get the skepticism. And maybe they did just, think about it for a few days and say, wow, we giving up 2 firsts for a guy, 29, coming off injury. Maybe that I get that, and maybe that's what happened. But my view is that their doctors really saw something that maybe another team will pass, but for their doctors, it was something. And the reason I say that I'm bolstered in that belief is because I think when he was at the facility and it was a long time before the match, I think they're talking to the doctors like, there's a problem? And then start thinking, what are we going to do? Like, how do we get out of this?
This is why you are a great guy, Chris Broussard.
I'm just saying, I mean, that might be it. But I mean, look, they're adults. They're a great organization. I know they're not a great organization.
I think Wildes might be worried the great organization went to the Giants.
Harbaugh is a great guy.
Right.
He is a great guy.
I mean, how much?
This whole ordeal was not a strike in the great organization category.
No, but I'm saying, when I say great organization, I mean they thought about, before they made this trade, they thought about, are we really going to do this?
Oh, yes.
Right? They brainstormed, they came to an agreement. So for them to then all of a sudden get cold feet, unless you think they saw some of the media comments and thought, oh, wow, are we doing the wrong thing?
Trey's price was lower than they thought. So here,
according to Schefter, they had been talking with Trey. But let me say this lastly, Nick. The Cowboys doctor was one of the doctors that analyzed the scans. Yep. And the fact that the Cowboys never, decided not to get back in it, from what we know, no other teams are trying to trade for Crosby. So I just think I think they saw something that maybe made them say, you know what, in 3 years, he's not going to be the same player. Might be great this year, not in 3 years. And then they pulled out.
So the part of it that, to me, I classify, there were 2 things that I classified as actual news. Mm-hmm. One might be petty and silly, and the other is noteworthy. The petty and silly one is this. I am surprised they did not fly him private there. When he got on the plane, he is about to become the 2nd highest paid player in franchise history. They have traded 2 first-round picks for him, and they know, because Baltimore is not a huge hub, that if you want to fly commercial direct from Vegas, you have to go to D.C. And so they said, you know what? It's $30,000 to charter a private plane. Not going to do it. We'll put you first class, and then have you ride for 2 hours.
They flew him back private, but I agree.
Right.
They should have
No, I think the Raiders flew him back private.
Oh, really?
I think so.
That part I don't know. I know he flew back.
I read the Raiders.
I thought he might have flown himself.
But they should have flown him private.
So that was just noteworthy. Totally. And by the way, I've never flown private in my life. I'm not like acting like, oh, first class. But typically for something like this.
Absolutely.
That struck me as odd, particularly because they knew he was then going to have to take a 2-hour car ride from D.C.
With your knee.
Right.
Yeah.
That was extra noteworthy to me when I then found out, according to Crosby, he did not see DaCosta or the new head coach, Jesse Minter, the first hour he was in the building pre-physical. So whatever discussion they're doing post-physical, before their doctors have seen the knee, the head coach and the GM don't meet him. Like that part to me was stunning.
Should have greeted him on the tarmac.
Right, and not on that. So that's the first thing where I'm like, wait, did they really have cold feet before they saw the scans?
This is one of those situations that is simultaneously fascinating and incredibly messy for a whole host of reasons. I find myself both excited to dive into this conversation and hesitant to wade into the murky waters, because there are so many layers, so many unknowns, and so many variables that we simply don't have clarity on. Let's start with the practical side of things. When you're an NFL athlete and you're dealing with an organization like the Baltimore Ravens, what does the meet and greet process actually look like? I honestly don't know what the appropriate timeline is for meeting the general manager, the owner, or the head coach. I think it should probably happen sooner rather than later. But at the same time, would it really shock me if a player hasn't met those key figures immediately upon arrival? Not really. If there's a scheduled meeting, which there obviously would be, it's not like the player is just wandering through the building hoping to bump into someone. It would make sense that someone of true importance, and I'm not even sure if Jesse Minter needs to be in that initial meeting, would have a designated time. That's what I'm trying to get at. Is there a gold standard way to handle these interactions? I don't know. What amount of time makes sense? If Maxx Crosby is sitting in a waiting room, reading a magazine for an hour and a half, thinking, they haven't seen me yet, that's obviously not right. But is it also not right if he's ushered in immediately? I genuinely don't know what the acceptable timeline looks like. Now, obviously, as Nick outlined, Maxx Crosby is going to be one of the most expensive players on the roster. He's a huge component of the Baltimore Ravens' future. You want to show clear respect, but in terms of what an actual acceptable timeline is, I honestly have no idea. Does it make sense for him to first get a tour of the facility with someone guiding him around, learning the layout, meeting support staff? Or does it make sense that the moment he walks through the door, Eric DaCosta, or whoever the key decision makers are right there waiting for him? I could see both sides. I could see the argument that you're there to meet the person right away, not an assistant, not a vice president of something, but the actual people in charge. Because at the end of the day, this is your absolute #1 priority. Think about it. In most areas of life, when you have to wait for someone, a doctor, a lawyer, whatever it may be, you're not the ultimate priority. That person has many other responsibilities and obligations. But in sports, in this type of situation, it's different. And that's something I actually really appreciate about sports. When it comes to a situation like this, it truly is the only thing that matters in that moment. There is nothing else. There's no other obligation, no other nonsense, no other priority. It's the most clarity you can have. It's one of the moments where I realize just how much I love sports. Sometimes I look at these athletes with a touch of envy. If I'm going through a hard time in my life, dealing with personal stuff, feeling unhappy, I look at someone like Patrick Mahomes and think, all he has to do right now is play football. That's the only thing that truly matters in that moment. No one hangs anything else over his head. His family understands. It's November. The only thing Patrick Mahomes needs to worry about is football. Nothing else. That level of focus, that clarity of purpose, it's something special. And it applies here. For anyone in the Baltimore Ravens organization, this takes precedent. You might say, well, running a team is busy. The GM has to do this. The owner has to do that. But this is probably the ultimate priority. This is the thing that matters most. You're in control of your schedule. You hold all the power. So go meet Maxx Crosby in an appropriate time frame. Go do that right now. Now let's talk about the other layer of this, the physical, the scans, the medical records. Nick framed it as if the Ravens were acting weird before anyone could have even looked at the scans or made any conclusion about Crosby's knee. If that's the case, then yeah, that makes this whole thing get weirder and weirder and points to the possibility that the Ravens just got anxious. But here's where I have questions. Is there a specific protocol for medical records in the NFL? I don't know if they had access to any of that information prior to the formal physical. Is there a set time when things can be reviewed? And honestly, the way some of this stuff works, is there a specific privacy route that a football team takes? Beyond HIPAA and all that, there's also the question of how records are transferred. If I see a doctor at Hospital A and then want to go to Hospital B, getting those records sent over can be straightforward. But I wonder, and I don't have this information, if there's a different, more secure protocol in the NFL. Is there a very specific process that has to be followed so that you can't just be sending medical records all over the place? Because then other teams could potentially access information they shouldn't. I honestly don't know. And they haven't mapped out a specific protocol publicly, the way free agency has a specific time when things can happen, the anti-tampering rules, the 3 p.m. deadlines. In terms of the physical process within the NFL structure, is it very regimented? Is it like, we can't look at your medical records until Wednesday at 3 p.m.? And when we bring in an outside doctor, does it have to go through a specific channel? I don't know. And I don't really know how to get that information either. So, if anyone actually does know, please definitely let me know. Because the way Nick is framing it, the Ravens were already acting weird before anyone could have even looked at the scans or made any conclusion about Crosby's knee. If that's the case, then yeah, it points to the Ravens getting anxious. Now, the whole thing about what you could see in the scans, I just really fail to understand how doctors are looking at these images and saying, nope. They know what procedures he had done. I have to imagine that, in terms of the actual surgical procedures, the Ravens had to have an understanding already of what was actually done. Therefore, their doctors, and the Dallas Cowboys doctors, and others, whether they had the ability to get the actual scans themselves and run their own physical, they had to have known. There's no way the only information they had was knee procedure. And they're like, okay, what does that mean? They had to have known he got specific procedures done. So, for them to look at a scan and say, oh my gosh, I can't believe what I'm seeing, I find that incredibly hard to believe. Incredibly hard to believe. And in terms of getting second and third opinions, that's common. When you're looking at scans, if you're looking at a basic X-ray, for instance, and I've had multiple MRIs, CAT scans, X-rays, with contrast, without contrast, all the fun stuff. My most controversial scans were on my clavicle because it wasn't healing. I had lots of doctors look at it. They ran their own scans, their own CT scans. And the reality is, with some of these scans, you can make an argument for anything. That's the reality. You absolutely can make an argument for anything. I had one doctor tell me, you have a non-union. Your bone is not going to heal anymore. I went to another doctor who said, well, I can see some callus building. I don't think you're there yet. And I can't document this as a formal non-union because, according to the guidelines, it would be wrong for me to say that. If I say you have a non-union now and we do surgery and your shoulder gets messed up, you could say I didn't wait the 6-month window. I can't actually diagnose you with non-union until 6 months. Then I went to more doctors. I saw 4 in total, I believe. And I got all different opinions. That's what made it so confusing and overwhelming. You can make an argument and see anything. So just because one doctor says, this is not working, that doesn't make it the end-all, be-all. Now, I will tell you this. Maxx Crosby's doctor, the one who actually performed the surgery, is obviously going to have the most optimistic and favorable view. That's natural. Another doctor could genuinely look at the same scans and say, that's great, but I don't think this is going to heal the way you think it's going to heal. So that's why this whole thing gets messier and messier for so many different reasons. Based on my understanding of what Crosby had done, some cartilage work, specifically on his meniscus, you're just not looking at a meniscus and saying, this isn't good. And even what Brew was saying, I think you'll be fine this year, but not in a few years. That applies to every single football player. Every single one. This isn't a situation where you're trying to figure out what Maxx Crosby will look like for the next 20 years. Any of the stuff he had done right now, I think you have every reason to believe he will be great for the next 2 or 3 years. Beyond that, just like every other player, his knees are going to be ugly. They're going to be wrecked. It's going to hurt to squat down. Patrick Mahomes, for the rest of his life, playing with his kids, he's going to be sore. When they jump on him, he's going to say, no, 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 that's daddy's bad knee. Come on. I quote Travis Kelce and Jason Kelce all the time because it means a lot to me as someone who's been injured so much. Jason Kelce said in his documentary, "Playing with my kids hurts. Getting down to the ground hurts." Travis Kelce said, "There's not a day that goes by that I don't feel every single surgery I've ever had." That's just the way it goes. So, this whole idea of I don't know about this or we just don't know if he's ever going to be the same, I just do not see how that's the reality. Do I see it affecting his quality of life? His ability to feel sore? His ability to run around and get on the ground and squat? Absolutely. I think all of that is permanently compromised for the rest of his life, like it is for me, just some guy who is not an elite pass rusher. We can always twist that conversation. We can always find a way to make it sound worse or better. What I take issue with is painting the picture as if this is a situation like Tracy McGrady, a career-ending, degenerative issue. There were certain knee procedures back then that they just don't do anymore because they destroyed your knee. That's not my understanding of what Maxx Crosby is dealing with. So, to me, any of this, we saw scans and we didn't like them stuff. Dude, you look at anyone's knee right now in the NFL, and you're going to see arthritis in their future. You're going to see surgeries in their future. That's just the reality of playing in the NFL. That's why this whole thing has always been incredibly messy. But then when you add the timeline aspect and you're dealing with the NFL, which is notoriously secretive, and understandably so, it becomes even more complicated. All this stuff isn't freely accessible to us. We don't know how it's run because it's proprietary. It's behind closed doors. Do you know exactly how Amazon and Google and YouTube operate behind the scenes? Of course not. The NFL is no different. And when you want to talk about etiquette, first class versus private travel, in my mind, I'm like, yeah, definitely private. But then I also think, I assume private is right, but I don't know. I've never been in first class, man. I don't even know what first class is like. I know what it looks like walking by and seeing it in movies, but that's it. So, I think this is one of those conversations where you have to be careful. You have to be accurate with what you're saying. You don't want to bring in things that are irrelevant or sound bad but don't hold weight, or sound good but also don't hold weight. You want to actually look beyond all of that. You don't want to cry wolf. You want to legitimately find the wolf and discuss that, rather than some of the extra fluff. But that's what makes it messy. That's why I was actually kind of excited to have this conversation, because it is genuinely messy. The one weirdest thing to me, and I wish I had said this in the very beginning, is Maxx Crosby's quote. He said, "No one will ever admit what the real truth is." And he said it about both sides. Both sides won't actually admit what the real truth is. Why would Maxx Crosby not admit what the real truth is? That's suspect. That's also kind of suspicious. That's what caused my ears to perk up immediately. When he said both sides won't actually admit the truth, I thought, well, you're Maxx Crosby. You have the mic. You have the podcast. You have everyone's eyes and ears. What is the whole truth then? So, it's a weird situation. It's a weird situation. But those are just my thoughts. I'd absolutely love to hear yours. What do you guys all think about Maxx Crosby and all of this? How does this land for you? Are you over it? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one, whether you agree with me or disagree. Either way, let's get some discussions going. Let's get into some friendly fights. But ultimately, let's just have some fun with it. And please, do consider subscribing. We are building an amazing community here, and I absolutely love to see you be a part of it. I want to build something that we all genuinely feel connected to, something we are really excited to be a part of. I think we are well on our way to doing that. Please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. It really does help with visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much for watching. See you next time.